Hello everyone, and welcome back to Switch On. I'm your host Ben Lamoureux, and as usual, I'm joined by two guests. First up, as a returning guest, we have the poor soul that actually has to edit all of these shows. Welcome back, Kelly.
Hi, thanks for having me on again.
Yep, glad to have you here. And joining us for the first time is Jeffrey McDonald from our writing team. Welcome aboard, Jeff.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, if you ever listened to the old Nintendo Week podcast or the Switched On before we rebranded it as Switch On, you might have heard Jeff on one of those ones. But he's new to this iteration of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But we're glad to have you.
Aw, thank you.
Well, a little glad to have you.
Oh.
So for this episode's discussion segment, we'll be digging into the trailer for Breath of the Wild sequel and just sort of discussing our general hopes and theories and just sort of losing our mind with excitement. But first, as usual, we'll break down some of the more interesting Nintendo news from the past couple of weeks. You guys ready to dig in?
Let's do it.
As I'll ever be.
So speaking of digging in, our first news segment is Shovel Knight, and I definitely didn't plan that ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you.
So, Yacht Club Games held a special live stream presentation where they just talked about the future of the franchise. And so the Treasure Trove will officially wrap up in December, and then you can get all the DLC in one package, including the multiplayer showdown thing and all of the extra campaigns where you play as different characters. And then after that, they actually revealed a totally new game, too, called Shovel Knight Dig. So, did either of you guys get to catch that trailer? What did you think of it?
I've never played Shovel Knight, to be honest. I've only ever watched... Oh, wow. Okay.
You've already angered Jeff.
I'll just see myself out.
No, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Edit myself out of this podcast.
No!
Bye, Kelly.
Bye.
Nice having you on.
But yeah, I've only ever watched people play it, but definitely feel like I want to pick it up. I mean, especially now that it's going to be like a bundle pack. Because, like, it's hard to, like, get into a game when there's already DLC out, because I'm like, okay, I don't know which DLC should I get, like, should I do this, should I do that? So I tend to usually wait until a bundle comes out, and then that's when I typically pick it up.
And a lot of times you get a better deal that way, too, where, you know, they reduce the price eventually, do, like, a Game of the Year edition kind of thing.
You know me, just saving money left and right.
But hey, you're rewarded for your patience.
I think I'll pick it up. It looks pretty good. It looks, I mean, like I'd expect it to look. Does it come with the amiibo by chance?
So that'll be a whole separate thing. They will launch in December at the same time as the Treasure Trove in a 3-pack. But yeah, that's a separate purchase, unfortunately.
Fine.
So Jeff, I know you're a big fan of Shovel Knight. Are you looking forward to Dig, the sort of pseudo-sequel or spin-off? I'm not sure what they're calling it exactly.
I think it is a sequel, but yeah, Shovel Knight Dig, I haven't really played a lot of roguelites myself. Ben, I know you weren't too fond of that particular reveal there, but I haven't played too many. I think Cadence of Hyrule is pretty much like the biggest one that comes to mind right now. I don't know, I'm just looking forward to seeing how Shovel Knight as a series actually moves forward now that they're finally done with Treasure Trove. So my impressions of the trailer, I'm looking forward to it. Love the music, love the visual presentation. Gameplay looks about the same as the original, but of course we're just going down, 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 down. So, it'll be an interesting twist on the formula. Just wish I could be at PAX this weekend to give it a go.
It looks really good to me, like it's polished. You know, they've sort of upped it from an 8-bit adventure to 16-bit. And, you know, I trust Yacht Club Games. They make just fantastic stuff, so I'm sure it's going to be fine. But I can't really get into games that have a procedurally generated world. You know, it always just seems like that takes a lot of the fun out of it for me. And especially since Shovel Knight, you know, the original had such great level design that I'm a little cautious that, you know, maybe this won't have quite the same feel to me. But, you know, like I said, it's Yacht Club. They can do no wrong, so I think there's a chance I still pick it up. But my initial reaction to the trailer was, oh, this looks like it's sort of Metroid-y, and then I saw the press release and it said randomly generated. I'm like, never mind.
Oh, well.
So next up, we have Astral Chain, which actually just came out, so I haven't had a chance to pick it up. I don't know if either of you guys have, but it's getting outstanding reviews pretty much across the board. It seems like Platinum really has a big hit on their hands. Have either of you guys gone hands-on with this at all?
I have not.
I did download it. I used up one of my vouchers, so it's just sitting on my Switch right now. But first things first, I have to put down Fire Emblem Three Houses, and I don't see that happening in the near future.
There's a ton of content in that game, so I can see it, eating up the next, 6 months of your life.
So much content! I finished off one of the routes. I'm on my second. I'm on New Game Plus right now, and it's still just so engrossing as it was the first time around.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Platinum, their games aren't usually sort of, up my alley. They're not really the types of adventures I seek out, but they're almost always well designed. They tend to have these really passionate cult followings behind them, and I feel like Astral Chain's definitely going to be in that niche. But one thing I can really appreciate about it is that there are apparently cats just all over the place. And one of the directors of the game was asked, why are there so many cats? And he was just basically no reason. It's fine. Cats.
Don't worry about it.
Why do cats need explanation?
Yeah, so I can respect that. And then also, the game's director apparently has hidden away a 16-bit little, throwback retro-style minigame. And it must be pretty well hidden because Brett Medlock, who is our editor-in-chief, he did a review of the game, and I don't believe he found it during his initial playthrough. He may have found it since then, but on his initial run, he didn't find it. So if you're looking for a little extra challenge, see if you can find it in there. Alright, so moving on to the next story, we've actually got a little bit of sad news. Comes from GameStop. And if you've been following them at all over the past few years, you know that they have been in a really rough place. I think we might have even talked about it on a previous episode. So they've gone through 4 CEOs in the past couple years, and they were looking for a buyer for a while, and then they just kind of gave up. And so recently they laid off over 100 people, including a bunch of prominent writers and content creators at Game Informer.
It's always the people at the bottom that suffer, never the top.
Yeah, that's sadly very much true.
Mm-hmm.
It's really unfortunate because stores like that, like GameStop and Best Buy, with this new day and age, they're hardcore losing money because when I was little and you wanted to go buy a new game, you'd go to GameStop or you'd go to Best Buy. But now when I can just hop on my PlayStation and download it from the internet, it's just kind of you're selling dying products. Not saying that video games are dying or anything, but a lot of people don't care for physical copies anymore. And if you do get physical copies, they're more of just a display thing.
Yeah, it's collectors really like to have them, but that's not the majority of the game audience. A lot of people aren't really worried about having a shrine to their video games, as fun as that can be. And yeah, it's in addition to just sort of people kind of shifting more towards, I'll take the convenient thing of just downloading it from home. Developers are really pushing that too, where games are very focused on digital content. They want to sell you DLC and seasons passes and all kinds of stuff like that you can just download. Or a lot of games have shifted to the games as a service model. Ugh. Or there's stuff like Game Pass or PlayStation Now, where it's more like a Netflix subscription. So there's just so many options now other than GameStop that it's tough for them to keep that business model going. But it's really unfortunate to see Game Informer in particular get hit because I think a lot of us grew up reading Game Informer magazine and all the good and bad that came with that, but still it's an important piece of I think gaming history and culture and everything, and so it'd be a real shame to see it go under.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
So at least one expert doesn't think they will go under, though. Another story from this week is that Michael Burry, if you ever watched the movie The Big Short, he was a major character in that. So essentially he made a lot of money during the big recession, about a decade ago, and so that's his whole thing. He invests in businesses and tells other people how to. And he recently invested, I think, a few $1 million into GameStop because he's convinced that basically, right now their stock is, absolutely in the gutter, but this is rock bottom. They will rebound from this. I don't think he necessarily thinks they'll, hit their glory days again, but to him, this is super cheap stock. He thinks he can turn a profit on it. And his reasoning is basically, we already know that the next Xbox will still have physical media, the next PlayStation will still have physical media, so therefore GameStop's death is it's overblown. It's not as bad as people are making it out to be. That's his take anyway. I don't know if I agree with that. Do you guys have any opinions on whether you think GameStop can bounce back?
Well, didn't GameStop just merge with ThinkGeek? recently.
Yeah, they bought them up, I want to say a couple years ago, maybe. And yeah, I don't know if that's been a very successful purchase for them or not. I know they've like bundled a lot of Think Geek stuff together. Like for example, when the SNES Classic was like in short supply, so they were like, oh, if you want to buy a SNES Classic, you got to buy a whole bunch of Think Geek stuff too with it. We're only selling it in bundles. So that kind of shady practice didn't sit well with me, but I don't know if it's been a successful move for them overall or not.
The GameStops that I usually go to, I mean, there's one that's at the Mall of America. It's a big one, and that has a lot of Think Geek stuff in it. But like some of the smaller ones, smaller GameStops, they don't have a lot of Think Geek stuff. They don't have a lot of the Think Geek merch. And I'm wondering if there's like a specific reason for that, because I like Think Geek's website. I liked all the stuff that they sold, but I can't seem to find it in GameStop. So I feel like there's got to be a reasoning for that, but I haven't really found the reason.
Yeah, it might be that it hasn't been super successful, and so they're sort of replacing it on store shelves, at least in your area, with other stuff. I know part of their plan going forward is they want to kind of lean more into retro games. I don't know how widespread that effort's going to be. Like, you can't really get retro games at the local GameStop in my town, but maybe that'll change in the future.
Admittedly, I'm a little skeptical as to how GameStop's future will pan out. And speaking as a Canadian above the border, I've seen what happened with Toys R Us. Well, at least from an outsider's perspective, where everything just flatlined in the U.S. and then people lost their jobs, they lose out on their pensions and everything else. But Toys R Us in Canada, it never really suffered, and it continued on as its own independent thing. So I'm kind of curious that if the same thing happens to GameStop, will EB Games up here continue as it was, or will it also go the way of the Dodo? I can't really say for sure until those
that's a good point. I've heard a few people kind of express concerns over that, and I don't really know what's going to happen with that, but hopefully they survive, because I know a lot of people have a lot of fond memories of EB Games.
It's where I like to go for most of my game purchases anyway.
For sure. And I have a little issue with his logic that, just because, the next generation consoles will still have physical media. Well, I mean, they still have physical media now, and GameStop is still bleeding money, so I feel like the industry is only going to get increasingly more digital, and it's like, yes, the option will still be there for physical, but publishers and developers are going to do everything they can to, get you into their whole digital marketplace. So I don't know if GameStop is going to go bankrupt in the near future, but I really have a hard time seeing them bounce back. But we'll see. Maybe this retro plan they have takes off. I don't know if you can do that without putting all the little like mom and pop shops out of business, but that seems to be kind of what they're aiming for. So I don't know. Maybe it's better if GameStop doesn't bounce back if that is the way they do it. But yeah, I don't get paid enough to make those kinds of high level decisions.
Plus, on that particular argument, if the argument that physical is still sticking around means that GameStop will still stick around, well, just ask the same of Blockbuster and DVDs.
Yeah, no kidding. Alright, so moving on to some happier news, we have a whole bunch of rumors and teasers and just various things about upcoming games. And actually, this is still GameStop related too. A bunch of new SKUs were discovered in GameStop's system that indicate that a whole bunch of Switch announcements are coming soon. So a lot of people think that we could see a Nintendo Direct. I've heard a lot of buzz and rumors that it'll be first week of September. I don't know if there's anything substantial to it, but I feel like it's definitely likely that we'll see a Nintendo Direct in the near future. So keep your eyes peeled out for that. And then we also have Monolith Soft recently put out a bunch of hiring ads, and they marked it as an urgent recruitment drive. And so if you're not familiar with them, they make the Xenoblade franchise, but they've also helped co-produce the last several Zelda games in a row, including Breath of the Wild, and presumably, actually, I think we know for a fact they're working on Breath of the Wild too. I think in their last hiring drive, they confirmed that they were hiring people for that project. So yeah, I don't know what it's going to be. It could be Xenoblade, could be Zelda, could be something new. What do you guys hope to see next from Monolith Soft?
Don't mind me, I'm just updating my resume here. I might apply. Might just apply to a few jobs here.
Retro Studios is looking too, so if you want to work on the next Metroid.
Maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the job security is super great there, so...
as far as I know, Monolith Soft, when it comes to their staff, they're a fairly large developer as is, so naturally they can work on several projects at once. I'm hoping to hear more about a future Xenoblade, personally. Because I loved Xenoblade 1 and 2. Gotta play a bit more X, but my Wii U is packed away.
Well, they did have, in Breath of the Wild, they had that Xenoblade outfit.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say I have a feeling that might be foreshadowing something. Hopefully.
Yeah, maybe more crossover content in the next one.
Maybe crossover or just a new Xenoblades title or remake or something.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of folks have been wanting to see 1 and X on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would make a whole lot of sense to do just sort of like, maybe deluxe versions of those. I know Reggie in the past said that it's not really Nintendo's policy to just do straight ports of like Wii and Wii U games. They like to be able to add something special to them before putting them out on Switch. So yeah, who knows? Maybe like a collection or something. Like I think that franchise is definitely starting to gain steam in recent years. So yeah, that'd be a great addition to the Switch lineup. I also hope that the urgent recruitment could be an indication that Breath of the Wild sequel has entered like full development, all hands on deck kind of stage. Because early on there's a lot of spitballing and you'll throw a few tech demos against the wall, see what sticks. But then once you really have a firm direction in mind for a game, then you tend to see companies hire a lot. So I'm hoping that means that the Breath of the Wild sequel isn't too far away. But we can dig into that a little bit more because that'll be our discussion topic later.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, Nintendo posted, it could just totally be a completely innocuous tweet, but the internet is losing their minds speculating that it's a hint at a Super Mario Sunshine remake or remaster or something like that for Switch. So basically Mario is just seen like dressed in kind of like a summery outfit, and I think he has a watermelon, and the caption reads, no matter where your summer odyssey took you, we hope it was filled with sunshine. And so people are speculating that this is a Super Mario Sunshine tease. And I don't know if I buy it, but I'd be totally for it, because I didn't really grow up with a GameCube, so I've never beaten Sunshine all the way through, and if they could make a new and improved version of it, I'd be 100% okay with that.
Yeah, I never beat it either. I remember trying so hard, but I just could never do it, and I gave up hope, and then just Googled what the ending was.
Personally, I'm hoping remake. I mean, I did beat the original, and I feel some of the controls could be refined, but there are some segments that could use a lot of work. Say, the blue coin collecting, or God forbid, the friggin' pachinko machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of the platforming sections were, not the greatest, like some of the like little mini areas where you just, go through a big platforming section and collect a shine sprite at the end. So I think there's a lot they could do to touch that game up. But it's definitely a fan favorite, and there's definitely a lot of people who still haven't played it yet. Switch, for many people, is their first Nintendo console, so I think that'd be a great idea to introduce that to a new audience, hopefully with a lot of quality of life improvements.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine they'd be able to get a lot more in if they remade Sunshine off of Odyssey's engine, I guess, as a foundation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That'd be cool.
And that, that graphics engine is beautiful, and the physics, like, everything feels exactly how it should be. Mario is a joy to control, so I would love to see it remade in that engine. And once you, spend all the money developing the engine, that takes years and a lot of resources, so you might as well milk it for all it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so next up, Microsoft once again indicated that they would like to bring Game Pass to other platforms. So we saw a rumor earlier this year that Game Pass and xCloud and a bunch of other Microsoft stuff was all coming to Switch, and a lot of it isn't confirmed yet, but we have seen Xbox Live support on Switch for a few games, and Microsoft has brought over Cuphead, and they're bringing over Ori and the Blind Forest, so still no official confirmation, but personally I'd love to see this just another way to expand the Switch library. I mean, I know some people are kind of console purists and are like, oh, we don't want Microsoft service on our Switch, but it's like, whatever, if I can get like 100 games that wouldn't be on Switch otherwise, then why not? Bring it on.
If purity is the problem here, then they'd be huge hypocrites if they bought either Cuphead or Ori.
Yeah. And I've actually never played Ori, which, is blasphemous since it's a Metroidvania, and I'm a big Metroid fan, but now I'll finally have a good reason to pick it up on Switch. So I think there could be a whole lot of other games in the Microsoft lineup or the general Xbox lineup that that people just like me, would play for the first time that they never would have played if it didn't come to Switch otherwise. So
Ori and the Blind Forest would be really fun to pick up. I should do that too.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next game that we've heard rumored for Switch, this one I actually do believe, is Overwatch. So Blizzard has talked in the past about how, they think it would be cool, and they think it's technically possible, but they always, kept their safe distance from any kind of confirmation. And so what happened recently is PowerA, a prominent company that makes accessories, they put up an Amazon listing for a Switch carrying case, with the Overwatch theme on it, and then it says, in the description that this is an officially licensed product by both Nintendo and Blizzard. So that seems like there's a pretty good chance that this is, an actual port coming, because why else would Nintendo license a product like that?
Mm-hmm.
Are either of you guys Overwatch fans? What do you think about the possibility of it coming to Switch? Would you pick it up?
I'm not an Overwatch fan, but I know people are. They exist.
They do exist.
So I'm sure they'll be very, very happy. It's kind of one of those games that, I'm just not a fan of those kind of play styles where you have to keep playing to get better, and if you don't play, then you're not good. Because I can't devote a lot of time to video games. I can devote an hour here and there every once in a while. But it's kind of one of those games that I think the younger generation will appreciate for the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Because instead of borrowing mom, dad's, or brother, sister's Xbox or PlayStation to play it, they can have their own system, which is handheld, and take it wherever they want. I think it would be good for the younger generation. I'm personally not going to pick it up just because I'm not really a fan of Overwatch. It's a very pretty game, and there's nothing wrong with it. Just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I don't play a whole lot of shooters in general, and especially not team-based ones. But Overwatch is appealing to me just based on the fact that it's 6v6, and the roles that the different heroes have is actually very similar to competitive Pokemon battling, where you have, like a small portion of the cast is offensive based, other ones are healers, some are, defense and support, and so you got to build this team of 6 where everyone kind of complements each other's strengths and weaknesses. So I like it for the strategy aspect of it, but I'm garbage at shooters. So I may pick it up, but it's not like at the top of my list. But, there's definitely an audience for it. People have been asking for a long time, and Paladins, which is basically a free-to-play knockoff of it, has been doing pretty well on Switch. And I think it's just, it goes to show, like, another example of a major popular third-party game that never would have released on, like, Wii or Wii U that Switch is getting. And so to me, it's just another example of, like, what a great job Nintendo is doing this generation of going out there and actually getting popular games. Even if in this case it's 3 years late, but it's, it's portable Overwatch, so.
But it's still a popular game, too.
Yeah, there's still, it's not at the height that it once was, but there's still, an Overwatch league that gets televised and everything, so it's got a rabid fan base still.
Yeah, as an outsider looking in, I do like some of the lore and the characters, so I might just pick it up based on that alone, but like you, Ben, I am absolute trash at shooters.
Yeah. And so, along that same line of reasoning, some people are now speculating that Tracer could be one of the final DLC characters for Smash. So basically, yeah, I know, I think it's pretty laughable too, but it's sort of just a coincidence of rumors where this Overwatch case leaks, and at the same time, there was a rumor circulating that, like, the final DLC character is going to be a prominent female character, but not one that you would expect in Smash, and one that's probably going to be sort of a controversial reveal, and so people were just sort of putting 2 and 2 together and getting Tracer. I don't personally buy it, but I could see it just because she's sort of the face of Overwatch. But I think there's definitely a lot of other characters that make a whole lot more sense to put in Smash for Nintendo's audience, and I think you'll probably upset some people if, like, Tracer gets in over someone like Geno from Super Mario RPG or Isaac from Golden Sun or something like that.
Well, Isaac is already an assist trophy, so that boat is dead in the water.
Or Waluigi, that's the one I should have thought of.
Yeah, Waluigi for Smash, need. Come on. I think if they put Tracer in, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I'm also just kind of like, there are better female characters, like you said. there are better female characters in Overwatch too. It's not just Tracer as like the main female in Overwatch. So
Sure.
I get that she's like the poster child, but I don't know. I don't think it's Tracer, honestly. I don't think that's who it is.
Yeah, I think her rewind ability would be pretty cool, but outside of that, she kind of just, runs around and shoots stuff. She's not the most interesting and unique character.
Mm-hmm. And just to piggyback off of that 4chan rumor, I think there was a follow-up post that said that this person has some kind of mecha with them, but then there's yet another post on top of that saying, okay, I was wrong, it's not a woman, it's a guy, so... I don't know, with 4chan links, you can never
anonymous,
know. Yeah, exactly.
Like, who do you trust?
So, yeah, like, sure, Tracer could be coming to Smash, but it could also just be all hot air.
Yeah, and I kind of lean towards the latter, but I guess we'll see in the coming months. I'm just happy that Banjo-Kazooie got in.
Mm-hmm.
He made it.
Yeah,
Not Waluigi.
Well, 3 down, 2 to go.
So, moving on to some upcoming games that are confirmed and aren't just whispers and rumors. We have Pokemon Masters, which, well, now it's no longer upcoming. It's out since I wrote the script. I don't know if either of you guys have gotten a chance to try this out. I wanted to, and the website says it's compatible with Android 5 and up, but my 6 can't download it. It tells me it's not compatible, so I guess I'm not playing Pokemon Masters.
Same, that happened to me too. I downloaded it, my phone's like, no.
It wouldn't even let me download it. Like, I went to the website, and it was just like, no.
I can click the download button over and over and over again, but it just says no.
I feel sorry for both of you.
Did you get a chance to play it, Jeff?
Yes, that I did. I got it on my iPhone, so not an Android. But from what I have played, it's a pretty cute little game, I'd say. A lot of fan service with a lot of fan favorite gym leaders, champions. Just a lot of familiar faces for a fitting gacha kind of game. I've only played a little bit of it, but from my first impressions, pretty good. I just wish my avatar had a choice other than Pikachu. Not to say I'm not thankful, but I would have preferred something more along the lines of Mudkip.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind like a little Chimchar or something.
Right?
I want a little Cubone.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Cubone's great.
He's my fave.
Aww.
Yeah, it looks like visually it's fine. It's a mobile game, but it looks good enough. The combat looks okay and everything. I'm hearing that there's a lot of server issues, a lot of wait times. Did you experience that, Jeff?
A little bit when I first booted up the game. When I first started it up, it was just, okay, I'm not connected, but I am connected to the internet. Are you just saying, is there something wrong with my router, or is it server? But yeah, it was more than likely the server. Took me about, I was able to play immediately, but they just download like the first a couple of battles just to give you a taste of the game, but then they download the rest, and after that point, that was when I started hitting server problems. But it should be squared away by now, I should think.
And you mentioned gacha mechanics. Is it the type of game where if you don't spend money pretty early on, it gets boring? Or is it more the type of game where just they dangle lots of shiny things in front of you and say, ooh, don't you want this?
I'd say it's at least from first impressions alone, it's more along the lines of Fire Emblem Heroes, where the game is perfectly playable just by going through the motions. They do give you new characters just as is every once in a while. And I think with every new story chapter, you get like a new gym leader or champion. But at that, granted, I don't wail over mobile games much. If anything, the only live service games I play ad nauseum are Pokemon Go and Fire Emblem Heroes. Might consider Pokemon Masters, but I know I'm not necessarily susceptible to these kind of mechanics, unlike some with more addictive tendencies.
So next up we have another mobile game, which is Mario Kart Tour, and that's going to come out on September 25th. So I was part of the beta earlier this summer, and it was okay. It was fine. It's Mario Kart. They have to simplify the controls quite a bit so that you can control everything with just one finger, basically. And occasionally that created issues where, I couldn't take a shortcut that I wanted to because the game's autocorrect was just kind of no. Mm-hmm. But generally it was good enough. It looks good. It plays, for the most part, pretty good. And my main issue was just that it seems like it's going to be fairly grindy. Not as bad as some games, but enough that I don't really feel like I'm going to play that much of it. I don't know if either of you guys are looking forward to it, or if either of you guys had a chance to try out the beta. Have you gone hands-on with it before, Jeff or Kelly?
Nah. I was never sent an invite for the beta, so I never got the chance to try it out. But at least from the previews, it does look interesting enough for me to give it a go. I mean, it's Mario Kart, so naturally I will give it a try, but with its transition to mobile, I'm not sure as to how that'll translate until I try it.
Yeah, and it definitely looks like it's all new tracks or not all new tracks, I should say. There's a bunch of tracks in the trailer that weren't in the beta. You know, the beta was all exclusively like old tracks that we've played before from past games, and you repeated a lot of them, but they've definitely added more tracks since then. It's not one where, like, right away you gotta start paying or it's not fun. You can definitely play it for quite a while, but eventually you will sort of hit that wall where it's like, oh, if you want to progress any further, you need more stars, and the only way to get stars is to get high scores. And, you know, you can get a lot of points by just taking first place in a race or by hitting people with shells, that kind of thing. But you also get points just by having more expensive car pieces. So, like, you can start a race with, like, thousands of points if you spent money on your car, and then even if you lose the race, it's like, oh, whatever, I still 5-starred it just because I have an expensive car. So, yeah, I complained about that on my evaluation or whatever that I sent into Nintendo, so I don't know if they paid any heed to that or not, but we'll find out in about a month. And I'll probably give it a go and then delete it after a week.
Yep. Well, fingers crossed.
As most games.
Well, and that's just the thing. It's like just about any time when I would have the urge to play Mario Kart, I'm probably going to have my Switch on me. There's not many cases where I'm going to be away from home and not have my Switch and be like, oh, I really got to play Mario Kart on my phone right now. So I don't feel the need to play what I think is going to be an inferior version of the game when I've got the superior version right there.
Yeah, that's kind of honestly how I was thinking, because I'm like, why would I download this and have it take up space on my phone and not work as well on my phone and drain my phone battery when I can literally just play it on my Switch. It's right here. It's available.
Yeah.
And I can play it right now.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a Switch, it's definitely fun in short bursts. So give it a try. It's free to download. Just, you know, don't let them guilt you into spending a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm. I do like some of the new stages being based on real world locations. So fingers crossed, something based on Canada. Woo.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And that's a nice way to, like, really market the game internationally. Like, if you can include landmarks and stuff that people will recognize, then it gives them more incentive to download and try it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next up we have the return of a couple of classic games that you may have played as a child if you grew up in the 90s. They are remastering the Aladdin and Lion King games, and it comes with multiple different versions, like Genesis and Super Nintendo and Game Boy, and a whole bunch of extra features, and that's all coming out on October 29th. So, I was garbage at these games as a kid. I don't think I ever beat either one, but I know there's a pretty passionate fan base for them. They have a lot more supporters than your average licensed game. Did you guys grow up playing these?
Let's be honest, nobody was good at this game.
Yeah.
Nobody was good at these games, but I owned both of them. I think it was for my Sega way back when. And, yeah, no, they were hard. They were so hard. The only thing I remember from the Aladdin game was, like, in one of the beginning areas, I think it was, like, a laundry line, and on one of the laundry lines was a little Mickey Mouse hat, and if you crouch and got Aladdin correctly underneath it, so it looked like he was wearing the hat, you got a bunch of extra lives, and when I found that, I thought I was the coolest person on the planet. Just
awesome.
saying.
That's a wonderful little Easter egg.
That's literally the only thing I remember, though, other than it being really hard.
I remember that you'd, like, chuck apples at enemies, and I thought that was amusing. in Aladdin specifically, not Lion King.
Yeah, Lion King, you just tried to jump away from the hyenas, but there was never a system or, like, a pattern to how the hyenas moved, so they could just predict
just
what
madness.
You were doing. Yeah, they would just eat you all the time. Scar would always win.
Didn't they recently admit that they purposely designed these games to be notoriously hard just so, like, you'd rent them over and over again?
That's possible. I don't actually remember hearing that, but it would not shock me.
Yeah, but either way, I just can't wait for Disney Classic Games Aladdin and the Lion King when it comes to Nintendo Switch on October 29th.
I was wondering if we'd make it through an episode without Jeff singing, and I did not think it was possible.
But yeah, I've never played Aladdin, but I grew up on Lion King on SNES, so this will be a nostalgic trip for me, but speaking of that particular song reference, I hated that level in particular. Screw the ostrich sections.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are pretty infamously hated by everyone.
For good reason.
Yeah, my sister-in-law actually does kind of just like casual speed runs of Lion King. So I showed her a GDQ run about a year ago or so with all the exploits and tricks and stuff you can do to save time, and she was taking notes and very excited about that. So she's over the moon at these HD remasters and can't wait to see her, break her record.
Yeah, I need to check those out then.
Alright, so next up, our final story in this segment is something that I know Kelly is super excited about.
Yes!
We finally have a release date for Castle Crashers on Switch.
Yes!
Oh yeah, that game.
It's coming out on September 17th, and it's actually going to be out a little before the PlayStation version. Apparently they needed a little more time to get it through Sony's testing or whatever and get it officially approved for the platform. But if you got a Switch, you can play it in about 3 weeks.
I will be doing that.
Yeah, I think we'll have to have like a staff team up or something and just all work together to wreck this game, because it's a ton of fun. It was one of the first really big indie games to sort of blow up and show people that you don't have to be a big multi-million-dollar studio to make an awesome game. So it's, I think, another just awesome example of this generation Nintendo just getting all the games. And it's it's a super old game. Obviously it's not like it's any breaking news or anything, but it's still a great game, and now you'll be able to play it on the go with, Nintendo fans who, once again, otherwise probably would have never gotten a chance to play this.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you could only play it if you had, what was it, the Xbox 360?
Mm-hmm.
It was just very specific to that, and I wanted it on my PlayStation for so long, and then never came, never got it, and then Switch, I was like, here's hoping. I actually predicted, I'm pretty sure I made a tweet about it, but I predicted that it was going to come out, I thought October 14th, sometime in October, because the original release date was in October. So I was like, that'll be so cool if they did it then. But I mean, 1 month earlier, I'm not complaining about anything. I'll play it till the day is done. I am so excited.
Maybe the PlayStation version will launch on the anniversary then instead.
Yeah, maybe. Then I'd be half right.
It was a little funny when you mentioned multi-platform there, because with a lot of these games, it's usually, okay, Xbox One, PC, PlayStation 4, they're all going to launch on time. Switch, we need extra work. Here's the other way around.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the holdup is exactly, but yeah, they said they needed a little more time to get it through Sony, so not complaining as a Switch owner.
Nope.
Alright, so for our next segment, we have some more unofficial projects made by fans.
DMCA.
Yeah, I was going to say may or may not have lawsuits coming their way, but we'll see. So first one, this is fine. This is Nintendo sanctioned. Someone made a Super Mario Maker 2 stage that takes World 1-1 and then just kind of flips it so that it's up and down instead of left to right. So it's basically like you're climbing a mountain, and it makes it a lot more challenging. And if you remember, one of the big things that was sort of blowing up for Mario Maker when it first came out was that someone remade 1-1 with fire everywhere. So people really like taking this easy level and just turning it into a torture chamber, apparently.
Yeah, when I saw footage of this particular stage, it just made me recall a very vivid nightmare I had as a child based on a very similar concept.
Oh no!
Yeah, essentially, I was on like a cube planet that looked like it was made of marble. The next thing I know, everything is turning. Wait, gravity is sideways. I'm falling indefinitely and screaming into the void. This stage
Did you have an okay childhood, Jeff?
I did. My childhood was fine. It's just that very specific nightmare always stuck with me as one of my earliest memories.
Do you want to talk about something, man?
I'm okay. I'm
I
fine.
always think it's funny that World 1-1 was sort of designed specifically to kind of teach you how to play the game without a tutorial. There's tons of videos on YouTube you can look up to see like a breakdown sort of screen by screen for, how the game teaches you how to play it. And then people have just taken that idea and perverted it into, what if World 1-1 just tried to kill you constantly instead? And I appreciate that greatly.
This was supposed to be a safe place, damn it.
So next up, we have another fan project, which is called Super Mario Flashback. So this has been in the works for about 5 years now, and it aims to kind of combine some elements of 3D Mario into a 2D Mario experience. And it's got this really beautiful pixel art style to it. And they're going to put out a demo next month, I believe, and that'll be the first time it's been playable. So, Jeff, you made a joke just a second ago about, Nintendo taking legal action. Mm-hmm. And that's something that this developer has talked about in the past. They're like, yeah, we know Nintendo's history, but we think we're okay since it's not a remake or anything like that. I don't know if I buy that logic, but, best of luck to them because it looks really good.
Yeah, Pokemon Uranium, Super Mario Royale.
Pokemon Prism too.
Yeah, I wish this developer all the best, and I hope this fan project does get traction, because speaking as a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, seeing how Sega reacts to these fan projects versus how Nintendo does, well, one clearly does what the other Nintendo doesn't.
Yeah. And Sega, they even ended up hiring Christian Whitehead because he did such a good job, making these fan projects that they were like, well, heck, why don't we just give you a job? So...
And not to mention online events like the Sonic Amateur Games Expo, where it's nothing but fan games, fan hacks, and just original projects as is. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, with Nintendo, good luck surviving a week.
Yeah, so we'll see. Like I said, it's been in development for quite a while, but once they put something playable out, then we'll see if Nintendo changes their mind.
Fingers crossed.
And then next up, we have another fan project that's actually a remake. So if the previous project's logic holds that Nintendo only goes after remakes, then these people are screwed. Because they're trying to remake A Link to the Past in the Unity engine. And it looks okay from the clips we've been shown so far, but it's just really a few 10-second clips on Twitter. So I can't see this lasting too long. If they actually do try to flesh this out, I don't think Nintendo will let this stand if they release it as a playable thing.
I do like how it looks a little like Link Between Worlds and the new Link's Awakening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, I've wanted a remake of A Link to the Past for a long time, but A Link Between Worlds was more or less that. It's more like a spiritual successor, but it's the same game world and everything. Mm-hmm. So I doubt we'll see an actual A Link to the Past HD or 3D remake or whatever, but it's still a property where it's close enough to stuff that Nintendo's working on that I doubt they'll let this stand. But more power to you guys. I hope it works out for you, because I'd play it. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alright, so moving on. The next story, it's a series of stories that are all kind of wrapped up in one, and that's Inti Creates. They are a smaller developer, but pretty prominent in Japan. They make a lot of action platformers. And they've committed to pretty much releasing everything on Switch going forward. They've said they just can't really see themselves making a game and not putting it on Switch at this point, as well as everything is performing on that console. And then almost immediately following that up, as if to prove their point, they announced that Mega Man 0 and ZX are getting all brought back and bundled together in a big collection. And it's coming to Switch as well as PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Did you grow up playing the Mega Man Zero games at all? We'll start with you, Jeff.
No. Mega Man was an outlier in my life up until Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and the Sonic and Mega Man Archie crossover comic. So I did start to get into the games from there. I pretty much played all the original ones, played a few of the X games. So Zero, never been on my radar, but I will pick up the collection.
How about you, Kelly?
Never played Mega Man.
None? Not a single one?
No.
We're gonna have to start a new series where we make a list of every classic game that you haven't played, and we're gonna run through them.
And I'll gasp after everyone.
Dude, there's a lot of games, classic games that I haven't played, so we're gonna be here a while.
It'll be a long-running series.
Great.
So I had the Zero collection on DS. I think they were originally Game Boy Advance games, and they They bundled them all together on one DS card. So I've beaten the first 3 Zero games, and I got most of the way through 4. I don't think I actually beat it. And they were all pretty good. But I've never touched the ZX games. And I hear they're sort of vaguely Metroid-y. So I'm in, as long as it's not procedurally generated. But yeah, this is just another, awesome collection to have on Switch. It's great to see all these classic games bundled together. And they're usually pretty affordable, too. So I'll definitely be picking this one up. And it's great for fans like you two who have never played them before.
Yeah.
Wow, I wonder why Nintendo doesn't do the same.
Yeah, or at least give us a virtual console.
Yeah, oh well.
Alright, so our final story for the news segment, that's actually kind of a fun and cool one. Reggie Filsaime is back in action, but instead of being president of Nintendo America, he has taken a teaching job at Cornell University. So basically, from what I understand of this position, he goes there and does lectures and workshops and stuff where he works with young, aspiring students that are trying to make it in the business world, and he gives them his expert advice, basically, shares his life story, tells them, his tips, and tries to help them find their way in the business world. And I don't know about you two, but I would love to, go to college and have Reggie Filsaime as my teacher.
Oh my god, it'd be amazing.
I went to Cornell.
Just this legend.
And then here come all the office jokes on social media.
And, obviously as video game enthusiasts, there's a lot of fun stories I'm sure we could hear from him. But that dude just had, a super interesting life even before that. People associate him with Nintendo, but he was the head of marketing for Pizza Hut and, invented, a bunch of pizzas and stuff. Or, not personally, but, it led the, marketing for them and everything. And even before that, he's had to overcome a lot of adversity. A lot of people don't know this, but his whole life is just this crazy story where his grandparents were on opposite sides of a civil war in Haiti, and so his mom and dad were a Romeo and Juliet kind of situation where they were on opposite sides of a civil war and had to abandon their families and flee the country to move to America. So he was born in America. He didn't actually have to experience all of that, but he grew up with parents that were essentially war refugees and worked his way up into the business world. So mad props to Reggie Filsaime, and I would love to have him as my teacher.
Wouldn't we all?
Mad props. Yeah.
Alright, so that wraps up our news segment, and now we can go ahead and move on to the discussion. In our first episode, we talked a little bit about the reveal of the Breath of the Wild sequel at E3, and now that the dust has settled, we can get a little more in-depth, have a more long-form discussion about the trailer, and then just our general expectations and hopes for the games. So if you haven't seen the trailer, what are you doing with your life? Pause this right now and go watch it. But for convenience, a quick recap is basically it takes place underground in a creepy-looking cave, and Link and Zelda discover this corpse-like being that's being held in place by a creepy ghost hand. And I don't know about you two, but I'm pretty convinced that corpse-like being is Ganondorf. But in general, what were your first reactions to the trailer? We'll start with you, Kelly.
My reaction was filmed.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Cast, and we all clipped the microphone because we were all screaming with so much excitement and enthusiasm, and it was great. It was definitely very unexpected. It was such an amazing little oh, by the way, we have this one thing that we forgot to tell you about.
I think everyone felt that Banjo-Kazooie was the biggest possible reveal that could come, and then they were like, but wait, there's more!
And then someone in Japan is like, hold my sake, I got this. No, it was a great, great, great surprise. I'm so excited, and I cannot wait. Breath of the Wild was so different than other Zelda games that we've had, and it was just kind of a fresh, new kind of way of looking at Zelda as well. And I'm really, really excited for the sequel. I've got some ideas of what could potentially happen, but I was so happy to see the trailer. It was amazing.
How about you, Jeff? Were you as blown away as Kelly and I?
Well, my reaction at the time was a lot more subdued because this was because I was covering E3 from work during my lunch break, so I had to be quiet in my cubicle. But I was freaking out on the inside. Like, sure, like first came the Dragon Quest Hero, and I was just like, "Hey, that's pretty good." And then Banjo-Kazooie, and I was like, "Oh my god, Banjo, 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 Banjo!" And then Breath of the Wild 2. Everything just dropped, and I just stopped whatever I was doing for coverage and had to text my little brother, who was also a huge Zelda fan, and just pretty much all catsing him, Chris, Breath of the Wild sequel, Breath of the Wild sequel, here's a link to the trailer, watch it! But yeah, my first impressions of what it's implying, like, possible return of the OG Ganondorf, Link, and Zelda together, just, I need this game now. I don't care if it's not ready yet for another couple of years, I want to play this right now.
Give us a demo.
Right now.
Yeah, I loved the original Breath of the Wild, so bring it on. Bring on the sequel.
I really loved the tone of the trailer, like really creepy music, and like this dark cave with the like torch flickering on the wall, and they discover some hieroglyphics and stuff, and then you see that just creepy ghost hand holding a corpse. Like it was a tone we haven't seen from Zelda in a little while, and I believe they said in an interview, they were kind of comparing it to Majora's Mask and saying it had a similar creepy tone, and it might even be a darker game than Majora's Mask. And frankly, I'm all for that. I like my Zelda games a little on the dark side, so it's there wasn't a whole lot in the trailer to give us any kind of indication of gameplay, but just the story elements that we have been presented with so far are extremely interesting, especially since Breath of the Wild didn't really have that strong of a central story. There's you get a little at the beginning and a little at the end, and then there's the memories you can collect, but those are totally optional. So I am interested to see if the sequel is a little more story driven, and if they can do that while still balancing the open world where you're free to explore and discover things at your own pace. So what are you guys hoping to see from this game in general? Like what can they do? Breath of the Wild got 97 or 98 average review on Metacritic. So what can they do to improve on that? What do you guys want to see from the sequel? Kelly, why don't you start us off?
I've thought about this for a long time.
You're prepared.
I am prepared.
Be prepared.
One thing that really, 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 really bothered me about Breath of the Wild was that I could not craft arrows.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I would get so insanely frustrated because I couldn't get any arrows for the longest time. And I'm running around trying to find merchants, and when I would find them, they'd be sold out because I already bought them out a couple of days ago.
Or they try to kill you.
Or they try to kill me because they're Yiga clan.
And in the early game, you don't really have much for rupees either, so trying to find arrows in the first 2 hours of the game is awful.
It's so insane, and I mean, I'm kind of... I don't know if I made a mistake or not, because when I played Breath of the Wild, I played it in its entirety, I played it all the way through, I played it to the point where I was like, yep, I'm done with this game, I can set it down for now and move on to a different game. Mm-hmm. The game that I picked up directly after Breath of the Wild was Horizon Zero Dawn.
Okay, yeah.
Which is kind of the same thing, like an open world game, but it was very interesting to kind of see these two very different open world games, but with kind of the same concept. Like you can slow down time when you jump to do the bow shot and get a steady shot on wherever you're aiming and things like that. But I don't know, that was one thing that I noticed hardcore in Breath of the Wild. I was like, oh my god, I can't craft any arrows, and I am dying.
Yeah, that was definitely something that a few people complained about. I introduced the game to a couple people, let them mess around on my file, and particularly in the early game, they'd find themselves being out of arrows, and they'd be like, oh, how do I craft? I'm like, ooh, bad news about that. So in general, I think they could do more with crafting. I think it would be cool if you could upgrade your items and stuff. I mean, there's clothing that you can upgrade, but I think they can definitely expand on that. And I think Skyward Sword did that a little bit too, where you could collect random items and then use them to upgrade and modify your equipment. So there's room for that, and I think there's room for just more permanent items in general. A lot of people complained about, the fact that your swords and spears and stuff break after a while. And that doesn't bother me too much, but I felt like there should have been more stuff that you get to keep forever, because it's a more rewarding feeling. And it doesn't have to be all weapons. Like, you could get the hook shot or whatever. And that could be a totally optional item. You don't have to get it, but it's, buried in a dungeon somewhere, in an optional dungeon. And if you manage to go through it and beat the enemies or solve the puzzles or whatever, then you get the hook shot. And that's just another way to travel, to, climb up a mountain faster, or to, go over a city wall and, come in through the back entrance instead of through the gate. So I think there's a lot of room to reward players for discovery with these permanent items. Or even magic, if you're going to go ahead and start to copy more, traditional RPGs, why not bring in some Skyrim-esque magic and mess around with that a little bit too?
Well, that's what they're speculating the Zelda aspect of the trailer was, where maybe you travel alongside, Link and Zelda are traveling alongside each other, and Zelda can do magic, and Link is clearly sword and shield guy, and
yeah.
I like that idea, but I don't think Zelda is a 2-player game. I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's spin-offs where that works, but to me, a Zelda adventure is kind of you against the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's room for that, and it'd blow me away, and I just don't know what I'm missing. But I like venturing out into Hyrule on my own and upgrading my character as I play.
Oh yeah. Have you guys ever played Dark Cloud?
Mm-mm.
I have not, but I know a lot of people are pretty big fans of that.
I am a huge fan of that game, and one thing they did in that game, which was very interesting, you had multiple different characters, and you could choose who to go in with in the certain dungeon. So one person has a sword, one person has a bow and arrow, or slingshot, I think it was, a slingshot. One gal does magic, and one guy has a spear. So, and each of those people had different, their own kind of leveling up system, and that leveling up system was pretty much just leveling up their weapon, and that was it. There was no armor or skill tree or anything like that. But it was interesting because you could play it as, nope, I am playing this one person and this one person only, and that's all I'm playing as, and it worked. Or you could be like, I'm divvying this up, everybody's going to be at the same level, everybody's going to get the same blah, 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 and it worked. So I'm wondering if they do Breath of the Wild where it is in a form of quote-unquote 2-player, where you can play as Link or Zelda, you should be able to change between the two of them, and then that's, how it goes. But yet again, that's just me speculating, so.
Yeah, and Breath of the Wild, their whole philosophy for that is, let's rethink the conventions. Let's not do things just because, that's what Zelda's already done, in the past. So they're definitely open to more experimentation.
Yes.
How about you, Jeff? What are some areas where you think they can improve on the sequel?
Well, let's see here. I mean, back when the Switch first launched, a lot of the new games, a lot of the new installments were essentially either built upon the foundations of their predecessors, or, like you said with Zelda Breath of the Wild, just rethinking the conventions, going back to a blank slate, or just turning everything on their head, like how Super Mario Odyssey returned to the sandbox, Pokemon Sword and Shield just forgets half the Pokedex exists, Breath of the Wild, it actually expanded on the whole open world segment, and I love that, but with the sequel, we're likely going to be exploring that same Hyrule again, so and given that it's a very short span of time, I don't see how the world would change all that much unless we go somewhere entirely new, which I'd be down for. I mean, given the illusions already brought forward to Majora's Mask, I wouldn't be surprised if we went with an alternate world setting. But I'm not holding my breath for that as much. However, I also feel that we're long overdue for a playable Zelda, which, like Kelly touched upon, we could just see ourselves switching back and forth between the two characters. But I think this for the sequel, seeing as Zelda is such a prominent face now is the time to give her the playable lead, like in Hyrule Warriors and Cadence.
So, I believe Aonuma did mention that they're going to be retreading Hyrule, but that doesn't mean it has to be all the same areas. The trailer takes place almost entirely in an underground cave, which
True.
basically just wasn't a thing in Breath of the Wild. We didn't really have caves. I mean, you had the shrines that go underground, but there weren't many caves you could actually go into and just explore. So we might see sort of like the dark underground of Hyrule, and who knows what all's down there. If we have Ganon, chained up, or not chained up, but like kept down there and being held in place by some ghost hand, what else is buried under Hyrule? Like, what creepy secrets are under there? And then we also see what appears to be the castle area, like rising up and floating into the sky. So it's possible we return to the sky, as in Skyward Sword. And other Zelda games have had sky places too. Minish Cap had City in the Sky. Twilight Princess had a City in the Sky. It's a pretty common RPG trope at this point.
True.
But yeah, I think we can stay in Hyrule and still explore like a whole lot of new territories. And if we do, my hope is that they bring back some more traditional temples and dungeons.
Exactly.
Because the Divine Beast just didn't cut it for me.
It was a good substitution, but I didn't realize that it was the only substitution at the time.
Yeah, shrines are kind of like mini dungeons, but I missed the full traditional dungeon, and you can do that while still keeping Breath of the Wild's open world feel. Like, there's plenty of ruined structures and stuff where you could just wander in and possibly from multiple different angles, like that big goddess statue out in the desert. Like, why not have there actually be an inside to that? You can enter in through a leg or through the back or whatever, have different places where the wall is broken away and you can just naturally discover these entry points and go in. It doesn't have to be like past Zelda games where it's a very obvious temple with a very obvious entrance and that's the only entrance. They can still make it feel like a natural lived-in world and then have the interior be something closer to a traditional dungeon.
If anything, I'd like to see more iconic locations, or like be they Easter eggs or like whole segments on their own brought back. Like I loved how they brought in the classic Lon Lon Ranch, and I think one of the temples from Skyward, actually two of the temples in a Skyward Sword, like you actually saw like the shrine segments like after you beat the boss in those areas in that game.
Yeah. So the spring of power, wisdom, and courage.
Yes,
those are all
the
ripped
springs
from Skyward Sword. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I forgot who pointed it out exactly, but I think like the coastal little town like at the bottom of the map was almost directly based off of Outset Island. So I want to see like more little Easter eggs like that. I'd like to see the 4 new champions like playing more prominent roles this time around, and just for a little like a little thank you for those who played the original Breath of the Wild, like maybe just some bonuses that you would have only gotten if you happen to have a save file on hand. Kind of like in Banjo-Kazooie, like where you just like it's okay, switch out the cartridges from Kazooie to Tooie, and then just picking up on new content from there.
So Kelly, before we started recording, I know you had mentioned to me that you were kind of interested in maybe like a skill tree system for Breath of the Wild 2. How do you think they could sort of incorporate that, where it makes it feel like more of a modern RPG, but still doesn't lose that Zelda feel? Did you have any specific ideas for cool things they could do with that?
I guess I was more speculating that when you think of a stereotypical RPG, the first thing that comes to mind for me personally is skill tree, and like what kind of a character you want to play as. Do you want to play as the stealth character? Do you want to play as the hunter? Do you want to play as a scavenger? Like what kind of, and like for this game it'd be what kind of Link do you want to play as? And it kind of worked out in Breath of the Wild 1 where like you had different outfits, and that was kind of how they skilled tree a little bit, was because you got the outfit as a whole, and then getting all the pieces, you got the set bonus on top of it, and then you could go upgrade those pieces of armor from the Great Fairies. And it was kind of, I don't even know where I'm going with this. I'm going to be 100% honest with you.
Well, the
I
bonuses
just
were kind of minimal from those, I would say.
Yeah, you had to go through great lengths to get, like, there were so many times I was missing, like, one flower. And for the life of me, I could not find the one flower I needed to upgrade everything. And, like, for me personally, I like to play those types of games in, like, a stealth mode. So for me, as soon as I got the Sheikah armor, I was like, okay, that's stealth. That's how I want to play the game. I'm upgrading this as fast as I can. So that's kind of how I played the game. And I know some people were like, oh, this barbarian armor is so cool looking. I'm maxing this out and I'm wearing it all the time just because it looks cool. I don't really care that it does yeah, cool, it does more attack, but like, I don't care. It looks cool. I want to wear it. So I guess that's kind of how they did the skill tree in a small, like, toned down form. But I think I would personally like to see a skill tree just because I want to be able to have the replayability of being like, okay, well, I played more stealthy the first time around. This next time, I want to go like hard combat and I want to just run in and, you know, kick butt, take names, all that stuff. So doing the skill tree kind of gives it, in my opinion, more replayability because then you can change how you want to play the game, and that's what I like about those open world games.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think I speak for all of us here. The one thing we're all looking forward to the most: rehydrated Ganondorf.
Do we
I
know?
love the memes.
Okay, I gotta talk about something that came up. Is Ganondorf gonna be a good guy or a bad guy?
Who knows?
So I kind of have an interesting theory about that. Actually, I know you kind of wanted to talk timeline stuff too, Kelly, and I'm always down for that. So one of my pet theories that I don't expect to come true, but that I think would be interesting, is that that Ganondorf is sort of a misunderstood good guy in this scenario, and I've had that theory for a while, just because in the original Breath of the Wild, when you get told the ancient story of 10,000 years ago when Calamity was defeated, they talk about the princess and the hero fighting the Calamity, and the hero is depicted as having long red flowing hair. Yeah.
Yep.
So some people have said maybe that's just supposed to be Link wearing the barbarian armor, because that also has long red flowing hair, or maybe it's a member of the race that the barbarian armor is based off of, the Zonai or whatever they're called. But that's very weird to me that Link would ever be depicted with long red flowing hair.
Yeah, he's very stereotypically either clad in green, or in that game he was in blue. So, but like it's interesting because when like you look back on that, like I guess it was like a tapestry that it kind of came from. You can't really depict faces, but Zelda was very Zelda, and Link was not very Link.
No, not
if that makes any sense. It just didn't look like him.
He either has blonde hair or pink hair. There's no in between.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know. And like that was definitely a theory that was going around for a while, and it was intriguing. But like then if Ganon's a good guy, then it's like, oh, do we get to play as Ganon? I don't know. I don't think I like that idea. But then who is the main villain? But then in all other Zelda games, like, Ganon hasn't been the main villain. In Twilight Princess, it was Zant for the longest time. Then he found out, oh, Zant likes Ganon. Oh, cool. Hey, they're friends now. I don't know.
Yeah, they pulled that in Four Swords Adventures, too, where Vadi's the bad guy for the whole game, and they're like, oh,
and then
JK,
it's Ganon.
secretly...
Surprise! Surprise, it's Ganon.
And, like, we know that there's a difference between the physical body Ganondorf and the evil incarnation spirit Ganon. You know, the latter is basically the spirit of demise reincarnating. But, like, for example, the Ganondorf in Four Swords Adventures is supposed to be like a new body. You know, he's not the same Ganondorf from Ocarina or Wind Waker. He was, you know, just a new Gerudo was born named Ganon, and then he finds this evil magical trident, and then the spirit of Ganon possesses him and he becomes Ganon. So I kind of like the idea of, you know, 10,000 years ago, Ganondorf realized his place in this eternal cycle, right? Where Demise's spirit keeps reincarnating, Zelda keeps reincarnating, Link keeps reincarnating. So I like the idea of a physical Ganon who resists, or a physical Ganondorf who resists the, you know, the curse of demise and has to, you know, like, seal him away or whatever. But then, you know, we see from the trailer he still has that gaping wound that seems to match the one from Twilight Princess. And the evil, they call it malice, you know, that purple evil energy is just, like, oozing out of him. So, I kind of like the idea of, Ganondorf tries to change his fate, tries to stop Ganon, but then when it's realized that, this evil energy just still pours out of your body, that either the royal family forcibly confined him under Hyrule Castle, or he voluntarily confined himself there because he was worried about being a danger. But, as we see, that evil kept spilling out of him and then eventually became the Calamity, and it didn't matter. So, I don't know if that's the direction they'll take it, but I'd be super interested to see that.
That's definitely a very unique take on Ganon, too.
Mm-hmm. And in general, even if that's not the case, either way, I'd still like to see them explore Ganondorf's personality more in this game. We saw all of that in both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's always nice to know your enemy.
Yeah.
But one thing I also noticed when playing Breath of the Wild, so Ganon's a Gerudo, and none of the Gerudo people, talked about him at all in Breath of the Wild. But in Ocarina of Time, they were, yep, male Gerudo. Let me tell you about the male Gerudo. Let me tell you all about that. But then in Breath of the Wild, they didn't say anything about it. So I'm wondering, and this is going back to, timeline-wise, but it's what is he still a Gerudo? Is he a Hylian in this chapter of the game? What's going on, man?
I would guess that because he's still technically alive, but, is basically a corpse, that maybe just no new male Gerudo is born if the old one's still alive. I don't know how, an entire race's biology can just be we can sense Ganondorf's still alive, don't produce any men. But...
Not up in here.
But yeah, that's the best I can reason, is that just because his body was still alive, maybe there just hasn't been another male Gerudo in 10,000 years, and they've forgotten all about that whole thing.
Yeah. And it'd be definitely very interesting if Ganondorf and, the Calamity was, like you said, two different things. And, as a bad guy in this kind of scenario, if he is a good guy, doesn't want to be the bad guy, is well, I'm gonna be evil, might as well seal me away. That can be a whole nother series of games, and not even games, just lore for Zelda.
Yeah.
And to try to figure out Ganon's past and Ganon's life and all that fun stuff, that'd be pretty cool, just saying.
And he sort of alludes in Twilight Princess to the fact that he understands that he's part of a cycle. If I remember correctly, there was actually some cut dialogue where he goes in great depth about how, we're just going to keep reincarnating, and it's almost the exact same as Demise's speech. But I don't think all of that text made it into the game. But yeah, I like the idea that this is still the same Ganondorf that we saw in Twilight Princess. He looks very, very similar, has similar jewelry, has a scar in the same place on his chest where he gets stabbed in Twilight Princess. So I like that idea that it's that same Ganondorf, and that he didn't really die in Twilight Princess, that, he made another attack and was subdued, or that he had a change of heart and was then subdued. But of course there's timeline issues with that, because according to the air quotes official timeline, Four Swords Adventures happens right after Twilight Princess. And at Four Swords Adventures you have a brand new Ganondorf, so Twilight Princess Ganondorf, I guess, would have had to have died and been reincarnated. So the timeline is a mess. It's a huge mess. And Breath of the Wild does not fit perfectly on any of the three major timelines. You just kind of gotta wedge it in there and pretend it fits a little bit.
Well, given the overt references to Skyward, Ocarina, and Twilight Princess in Breath of the Wild, I think it already spelled out for itself where it took place there.
Sure, I think it fits best on the child timeline, but I understand that there are decent arguments to be made for, the adult or the fallen timeline or whatever. And Nintendo themselves have been careful not to officially confirm. They're just it's at the end of a timeline.
Yeah,
guess which one?
Yeah, probably wait several more Zelda games before they come up with a new timeline. But
yeah, I see this as just a soft reboot for the series. They're not saying the old games don't count. They're just saying the old games took place so far in the past that we don't have to explain how they connect to this one anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just hope that if Ganon is the main villain in this Breath of the Wild 2, I really, really hope he's a lot tougher to beat than Ganon was in Breath of the Wild 1.
Yeah.
It was so anticlimactic, and it was so that was like the one disappointing thing about the game, I feel, is that the boss battle was just so anticlimactic. As Pig Ganon, the giant pig, he didn't even move. He didn't even move, you guys.
Yeah.
He just stood there. And it'd be way more terrifying if that beast was running at you and you had to run away.
I think they just kind of wanted to show off the scale of Hyrule and what horseback battle could be like, but the final stage was pretty boring.
It's so boring, and like, I'm one for hard games. I love like Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I love the fact that you can't normally beat the boss on your first go. So I would love for Breath of the Wild to kind of take that, where it's like you have to try to fight him a few times before you get it. And especially with Breath of the Wild, they were very less hand-holdy, and you could wander into really difficult areas unarmed, and you'd get killed right away. It was just how it was.
That's how you learn.
That's how you learn. So I'm hoping that if Ganon is the bad guy, even if Ganon isn't the bad guy, I just want a tough boss in Breath of the Wild, too.
Agreed.
That is what I want. It doesn't have to be Ganon. I don't care who it is. I want to struggle to defeat this guy, because that is so much more rewarding than being like, I shot the pig.
Absolutely.
I did it. Yay, I did it.
Squeals like a hog.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. That's one thing. Me personally, I want it. You know, I get it if you don't, but
I will say the pig fight's easy no matter what. But I don't know if you've played the master mode or whatever, where everything's harder. But the first stage of that fight is actually really good on that mode, because if you go more than like a few seconds without hitting an enemy, their health starts to regenerate, and he, he's most of his body is invincible. There's only, like a few places you can hit him, and there's only a few times you can hit him, like if you trigger a flurry rush and that sort of thing. So if you play it on the harder mode, it actually is really challenging, because you have to get like every hit in possible, because if you even miss one, then it starts his healing cycle and he heals off all the damage you just did to him. So that does make it more challenging until you get to the last stage, and then it's just like, shoot the pig, like you said.
Shoot the pig.
Yeah, just with Beast Ganon that huge, you'd think he'd be able to raise all of Hyrule to the ground, but that wasn't what was at stake. He just stood there.
I know, and that was so boring. Like, the amount of times that, like, when I was playing it, when I flew up and then I was like, oh, where's my horse? Where's my horse? I could literally stand there and turn the camera, like, all the way around and, like, look for my horse. It would be so much more terrifying if you landed and you're like, oh god, he's coming at me. Where's the horse? Oh jeez, I gotta move. Oh, he's coming. Oh lord, he's coming. Like, that would just make it, that's just like a tiny little thing that they could have done, and it would have made the game so much, like, so different. The ending would have been so different, because the best thing about a boss fight for me is the panic and the kind of like learning, okay, he's gonna do this, but I need to figure out what I'm gonna do. I've got to do this, and then, it's
an adrenaline rush, when you don't have that sense of security.
He just stood there, guys.
Yeah, the only boss.
He just stood there.
The only boss in Breath of the Wild that actually hit that high for me was in the extra Divine Beast through the DLC.
Oh, the monk.
Yeah, that was so cool. Like when suddenly the percussion started going up and the bass started getting a little heavy, I was just like, wait a minute, am I fighting this guy? Oh my god, he's huge.
What's happening? Yeah, that was a shocker.
Like, wow, a good boss in Breath of the Wild.
For real.
Yeah, so hopefully we see a lot more of that in the sequel.
Well, there was one thought that just crossed my mind about the corpse that we're seeing in Breath of the Wild 2.
Sure.
Did either of you take a snapshot of Ganon during the boss fight in Breath of the Wild 1 and got his description? It said that before Link was coming, like, he was literally rushing to create a body, like a physical, like, human body to fight him with, but couldn't finish on time. What if this is that little project of his?
Okay, so you're suggesting that this Ganon hasn't been down there for thousands of years and instead is just recently formed.
Some little bit of column A, column B. Like,
sure.
Like, I don't see like that.
Or he's been forming over the thousands of years.
Yeah, like I think
he's been creating that body
exactly
to inhabit.
Yeah, just after like after just constantly going through the cycle over and over again, I think like the line between Ganon and Ganondorf has pretty much like blurred, if not just had the two merge altogether. 10,000 years ago, I do see how people can feel like that the red clad being that went up against a Calamity was Ganon, but in my head I'm also thinking, but Demise's curse specifically states that like there will always be an incarnation of hatred with the spirit of the hero and the blood of the goddess. So I figure, okay, maybe not then, but I do like the idea of a redeemed Ganondorf, or just at least seeing that curse officially breaking. At least like Link and Zelda and Ganondorf, like in the end, finally breaking that cycle. I'd like to see that with Breath of the Wild.
That'd be a really interesting thread to pull on. I will say my disbelief about the idea that this is, a physical body that he's been forming is, as far as I can tell, it looks like the evil malice is flowing out of the wound, whereas I would expecting it to be like flowing inward if it was creating the body. Yeah,
and the hand doesn't really look like it was made from malice anyway, so that was probably just that thought bunny that hopped in.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, but whatever route they hope to go, I really want to see more of an exploration of the character of Ganon and his role in the cycle of the Curse of Demise. And yeah, there's a lot of potential for them to explore that. And I think the fact that the first trailer focused on story instead of gameplay is really interesting.
I wonder what happened to the mouse.
What did happen to that mouse?
It's an evil rat now.
Yeah.
One last thing.
Yes.
The one thing, too, in the trailer that was different, Zelda's hair was short.
Yeah.
So, in Japanese culture, when women have a dramatic change in their life, they usually cut their hair short. So I'm wondering, what was Zelda's dramatic change?
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe she has kind of a crisis of conscience or something and decides to, rethink her status. She's been the princess or whatever, and we saw that she had a lot of conflicts with her dad over what her duty was supposed to be. She wanted to study the Sheik attack, and he wanted her to, focus on going to the shrine. So, yeah, it'd be interesting if she's had a sort of a change of heart about her, her position in the world and her path in life.
I also imagine shorter hair is easier to animate. Playable Zelda.
That's 100% true. 100%. I know that from experience. No, I think having her kind of tag along with Link, I think that'd be really, really cool. I really hope that they actually do something with that, and she's not just, like, sitting in the sidelines like she usually is with every other Zelda game.
Yeah, it's almost like the series isn't named after her or something.
Yeah, it's like she should be adventuring or something.
Almost like we want Breath of the Wild 2 to be literally Mario and Luigi. But Link and Zelda.
No.
Well, on that note, I think that about wraps it up. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Jeff and Kelly, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure.
And as usual, you can find more awesome Nintendo news coverage at nintendoenthusiast.com, and you can look forward to the next podcast in about 2 weeks. And if you've been following us on YouTube, we're also releasing what we call Switch Clips, which is where we just take like a 5-ish minute segment of a podcast that we thought was particularly fun or interesting, and then Kelly adds some visual flair to it, and we make a fun little video for you to watch.
Woo!
All right, until next time, you can follow me on Twitter at Erimgard, ERIMGARD. Kelly?
You can find me on Twitter as well. I'm Kelly the Editor, KELLYTHEEDITOR.
And Jeffrey?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at VizardJeffhog, VIZARDJEFFHOG.
All right, thanks a lot, everyone. Until next time, bye.
Bye-bye.
So long.